Koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Anne-Marie Thomas tako ingoa, and as Angie said, I'm the LIANZA project manager, focused on this wonderful resource called Te Tōtara and the ways that it can be applied and supported in the library and information sector. It's great to have seen your faces as you came in. I haven't met you all, and just to let you know that you can contact me at any point following this presentation if you'd like to learn more about how to apply this framework in your context. I'd be very happy to be available to you all separately, or in whatever forums or hui that you have where you think it would be good to know more. But this is really a 101 intro to Te Tōtara, and I'm going to walk you through this as a framework. So it's a workforce capability framework for the library and information sector in Aotearoa. It supports you to think about your current level of knowledge and skills, and to identify areas for growth, and broadly just to strengthen a diverse library and information management sector workforce in all your glory. It's got a good pedigree. It's been developed with the New Zealand Library Partnerships Program funding during the pandemic, and it had a lot of mahi involved from a lot of people. So over 100 people were involved in the development stage, and they developed the Te Tōtara framework and some of the supporting resources that I'm going to take you through today. It's applicable across the sector. These are generic core capabilities needed for working really anywhere in the sector, whether that's a school setting or public library, tertiary, archive setting, museum. It's something that people can go to and take from, and then pick the bits that suit their context. So now to introduce the capability framework. So there's lots of different applications with any capability framework model, and in this one in particular is designed to be holistic and to be something that speaks to a sector meaningfully. And as such, the use of the tōtara is a metaphor of a very proud Indigenous tree, very strong tree with very strong roots, with a heartwood trunk, a wide canopy, and self-nourishing falling leaves. So you'll see all the way through the framework and the resources these metaphors around growth and regrowth, and growth as a cycle. The metaphor represents both an individual tree and also a ngahere, the forest of interconnected trees representing the team, and the wider ecosystem of the library and information sector. And in turn, this structure supports the community or the organisation in which you work. So it's a rather beautiful metaphor. There are 4 elements. Te Tōtara is a practical tool for reflection and development. It's guided by kaupapa Māori, and you'll see A, ngā paiaka. This is the roots containing the kaupapa and the principles for the framework and for the sector. It is cross-referenced with best practice. We're just looking at the Te Tiwai section there, the trunk. And it is a whole series of branches, ngā ruha, adaptable to suit different sectors and your different roles within the sector. And then we've got the falling leaves supporting growth as a life cycle, te rauhinga. I'm going to take you through these different elements, starting with the roots. Te Tōtara is grounded in our Indigenous context, and it makes references to Te Ao Māori and has these 7 principles from Māori kaupapa, which are at once Māori, but they are also relatable across cultures. So in a way, it's asking you to look at these roots and then to refer to them yourself with your own understanding of these roots and your own labelling of these roots. It honours Te Tiriti o Waitangi and it embraces Mātauranga Māori. It identifies the behaviours for serving communities. So it's not just all knowledge and skills, it also talks about different personal attributes and behaviours. These are the things that we need to be caring for our communities, caring for our collections, and managing information as kaitiaka or guardians. It encourages you to bring your culture and values based on this Indigenous foundation. The trunk, Te Tōtara, is tied to a strong core of professional ethics and professional context. And in these challenging times, this is very much a point of reference for everybody. If people are challenging your role or your place in the sector or your service, this is a point to go back to and look at the trunk of what the sector is here for. So the trunk represents that wider ecosystem of the sector's shared values, ethics, and knowledge. And the IFLA core values and code of ethics steer the sector through change, whether change in technologies or social funding or funding or political challenges. And it also references LIANZA's Code of Professional Conduct and the Bodies of Knowledge. And then the capability branches. There are 7 groups of capabilities, and within those, 23 core capabilities for working in the library and information environment. On one side of the tōtara, you do see that these are very relational and they embrace the attributes that are personal attributes, teamwork and collaboration, community care and services, and then at the top you'll see planning, management and leadership at whatever level. So that could be leadership in a particular area that you have or hold in your workplace, not just leadership at a senior level. And then on the right-hand side down here, you've got the knowledge and skill sets. So you've got literacies, reference and research services as one section, information, knowledge and data management as another, and collection, records and archives management as another. So not all of you need to look at all of these branches, but they comprise as a whole the core capabilities for the sector. But then you need to select and customise to fit your role, your library or service. The structure then has a process for self-assessment. And when you self-assess your capability in your context, you can apply these capability levels. So you'll see there's kōrero, mōhio, marama, and mātou. It's not a goal to be mātou in every capability. This isn't some sort of competence structure where you have to reach the top. Instead, it's asking you to self-assess where you are in an element, and then within that element subheadings, and then within those descriptors within those subheadings. So there's layers and layers here. And as people, we strengthen our knowledge at different levels over time. So this is not a race to the top. The kōrero level you see here, and it is included in the self-assessment resources, the worksheet and the workbook. But as you work your way through the Te Tōtara framework itself, you won't see the kōrero level. It starts at mōhio and goes to marama and mātou. That is because the kōrero level is really good to have acknowledging new knowledge sets, and particularly for people coming in new to the sector. And it's a nice way to say, I'm at this level. It's a foundational level, and I will build from here. I'll give you an example. So you saw that there was a capability group called Literacies Reference and Research. Well, each capability group has a statement with descriptors. And for this one, the subheading is Digital Literacy and Dexterity, and the statement is the ability to understand, use, and actively participate in media, information, and communication technologies to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information and help people live, learn, work, and thrive in a digital society. That's quite common in a workforce framework, that you get these wordy statements. They're trying to be general for this area of knowledge, skills, and attributes. So under those, there's an element, a descriptor, the first of 6 in this section I have put here, and it's digital well-being. So you'll see at that level of comfort, for this level, it means behaving safely, ethically, and responsibly in digital environments to ensure personal health, safety, and work-life balance when using technology. So when you're self-assessing, you might connect with that and say, yes, that's me, that's my level. Or you might be marama, supporting others to develop safe, responsible digital practices. So having just that extra step up of skill and knowledge. Or you might be mātou, developing and projecting a positive digital presence and managing digital reputation, reviewing the impact of online activity, so more of a meta capability there. So this one has 6. They have different, there are differences in how many sub-elements are within each descriptor, but each descriptor has these 3 levels. And then the other part of the framework that's so important is te rohinga, the fallen leaves, and thinking of that metaphor of growth and life and gardening, and all those wonderful metaphors about nourishing through a tree model. The fallen leaves come back and rejuvenate the ground on which the tree is rooted. This is a section which is about aiding you in reflecting and understanding your learning needs. And it's something to go to, I think, early in viewing the framework. Even if you don't read every single capability area when you start, go and have a look at the fallen leaves, because there's some really lovely questions there that get you thinking. For example, all right, here's an area, skills and knowledge. What deliberate strategies do I use in this area? What are my key lessons learned, which I teach to others? I like this one. Have I had opportunity to observe excellent performance in this area? So often we're trying to work in isolation, and it would speed up our learning if we had a role model. Who are my role models? Where are the role models? And what on-the-job learning, education, training, or reading have I already done in this area? And from there you can self-assess and start to think about what you would want to do more of. So throughout our working life, we're all learning to adapt and to grow in changing organisations, facing challenges. And one of the nice things about the reflecting questions is that it supports you to think about how you operate in this changing environment. And therefore, part of Te Tōtara capability development is then to look around and say, well, how do I get support for my learning and development? Or if you're a team leader or manager, how do I support others? So what I'd like to do now is to look at the various ways you can apply Te Tōtara, whether it's for you, for your own professional development, or for team development, and or both. And you can apply Te Tōtara to suit your time, your context, and your aspirations. So let's go through these, the different applications. Broadly, they fall into Te Tōtara as a tool for individual learning and development. It's also a tool for teams to create shared goals. It's a tool for demonstrating organisational alignment, and it's a tool for advocacy. I'm going to start with individual applications. So it's a self-reflecting tool. Where do my strengths lie? That's a good place to start. Start from a strengths-based approach, and of working with others, be mana enhancing. So start with what people bring, what they feel comfortable with, and then where they're developing. What are the areas for growth and development from here? Because we all have them, and we all have them all the time. As an individual, as you self-assess, have a think about, would I like to grow my strengths in this particular area? How does that fit with my role? What are the opportunities available? Importantly, what's blocking my learning, and how can I overcome this? And what strengths or wisdom do I hold that I could share with my team or with the wider library network? So the goal is to identify areas where you would like to develop capability and support you to plan for this, creating SMART goals. And then as an individual, bringing this in a discussion or kōrero with your team leader or manager, it supports those goals being supported, basically. It supports the goals being realistic and achievable, and it helps regulate our own blind spots. So, you know, we might have a tendency to underscore ourselves, under-assess ourselves. So it helps regulate our blind spots. Or it might be an area where we haven't seen a development need, and we can be supported to say, oh, okay, well, there's another stretch here for me. And getting organisational support for your goal setting is really important to keep yourself on track, as well as organisation accountability. So how are ka mahi using Te Tōtara? Well, it includes identifying, setting your own personal goal or goals, having a conversation with your manager, applying for professional registration or revalidating your registration, and also for career planning. I want to talk next about team applications, because Te Tōtara supports leaders and managers to say, well, what needs to be supported by us across a whole team? So it can support finding out where the strengths lie in the team and acknowledging these, and also where are the areas for growth and development. So Te Tōtara is a reference tool for leaders and managers to have a think about how they can take the pulse of the team in key areas, how they can identify, well, what's the learning environment in this workplace? What opportunities for learning are available here? And what areas would we focus on first in a team learning and development plan? So it gives rigour to developing and planning, and it gives an evidence base to support your organisation to implement it. So examples of how teams are using Te Tōtara include identifying current strengths, taking the pulse of confidence and capability in key areas, assessing the barriers and opportunities for workplace learning, identifying an area or areas for shared professional development, building a team learning and development plan with SMART goals, and as a tool for having conversations with the wider organisation. Now, this framework was piloted It was piloted with the Kapiti Coast District Library teams, and they are very much credited with helping shape some of the supporting resources for Te Tōtara. But there's also been a lot of other early adopters since Te Tōtara was published in 2021. And this sprinkling of early adopters have got some really good messages to share. And in subsequent webinars, you will get to hear from some of them. So early adopting team leaders and managers have often started with a shared goal rather than introducing it to their team and just handing the framework to team members and saying, hey, do something with this. Often they've pulled back and they've said, no, let's do a team approach first. The three most common areas that I've noted people starting with have been around bicultural capability, the roots, looking at digital literacy in the team, and also leadership development. So you can see here that team leads and managers have talked about how it can be used as a gap analysis at team level, as well as a professional development tool for individuals. At team level, you can look at shared goals, and it's a document that helps you understand what you know, so the team can actually answer that question, what we know we're good at, and this is where we're falling down. It's also something that leadership teams can look at together if you're in a bigger organisation. Or if you're perhaps, for example, a school librarian and your manager and your operational support are not librarians and may not understand your particular role and work capabilities. So it's something that you can have a discussion with them about. And it may be that you come up with a direction from there. It's also, early adopters are saying it has to be really practical, and this is fed into how we've revised some of the supporting resources. And this one, it's basically a conversation tool. And this person talked about it being a conversation tool for disrupting stale thinking. There's a wider application here using Te Tōtara for individuals and teams also supports organisational planning. So using Te Tōtara to demonstrate how you and your team align to the wider mission is a very useful thing to do if you need to do that as a reporting mechanism, or if you're under scrutiny, or just to participate in conversations about things like role rescoping and all sorts of changes that you will be coming up against. This is a tool that you can use to support a conversation. And it can ask, where does our team need organisational support for growth and development? So talking to senior managers, HR managers, learning and development managers, and collectively having a think about, how do we bring Te Tōtara reflections into the performance development processes? How can we include Te Tōtara capabilities in job adverts so we target what we're looking for, and in our position descriptions? What are the capability gaps that we want to bring in with a recruitment plan? How does Te Tōtara support our middle managers to grow a learning and development culture in the workplace? And how do we use Te Tōtara to build people capability and succession plan? So it supports these wider conversations. In particular, targeted recruitment ones, because I hear people saying that they are finding it difficult to get a lot of applicants and difficult to get applicants with specific skills, which might be needed to fill a particular gap. So that takes planning. So getting your senior managers, your HR managers on board and building the gaps into people planning is very important. So examples of how organisations are using Te Tōtara include strengthening bicultural practice in the workplace. And some are talking about having shared Te Tōtara within the bigger context. So, for example, in a university context, they've shared this uniquely library framework, and the university's gone, this actually looks great, and we would like to take some aspects of this and apply some of these capability descriptors in other parts of the university as well, because many of these things are about serving communities, serving the organisation's purpose. And quite often it's been around bicultural practice and strengthening that, and the role of the library within the wider organisation for strengthening the whole organisation and their bicultural practice. Another example is, as I've given, strengthen recruitment and service planning. Strengthen engagement with community. It's a reference tool to be able to say to the community, this is what we do here, these are our capabilities. How can we engage and share so that you know what it is that we can offer you? They're using it to grow a learning and development culture, to enrich their people and performance practices, and to match service delivery with organisational strategy. So I've just done a summary slide here. It's something you'll be able to come back to and have another look at. But basically the whole picture is that it's a sector-wide framework. It gives consistency to capability development, but it's a tool, and it's a tool at the individual level for teams, for organisational planning, for building awareness, which supports services and bicultural and community best practice. And it's also a tool for education providers who are interested in looking at it in terms of curricular review and supporting their own educators' self-reflection and development, and also in pointing students to Te Tōtara to have a think about what capabilities they come in with and what they want to do in their careers. So there are a number of resources available to support the sector to use the framework for these purposes. There is a flyer that asks the question, as a leader, why would you adapt Te Tōtara? And it reflects from the perspective of a school library manager, public library manager, and a tertiary library manager. But actually this is a whole of sector framework, and you'll see that the logo's there. It has been endorsed by leaders across the sector, and they are encouraging their parts of the sector to use this framework to strengthen, and you have this common language to strengthen capabilities in the sector. So that flyer is available on the LIANZA website. Here's a front page of the framework itself. There's your ngahere of Tōtara. And it's on the LIANZA website on the professional development page. It's also on the original project page on the National Library website. So here's the Taku Tōtara workbook. This resource has been a static PDF on the website, but as of this week, or was it this week or last week, it went on as an interactive PDF. So let me walk you through it. So this is a welcome statement to your Taku Tōtara, your workbook. And when you're ready to be able to go in here and download it now and save it so that it truly is your workbook, it also means that you can go back to it. You don't have to do this all in one bite. It's quite a comprehensive workbook, so you will probably want to return to it and build it up over time. So in this workbook, you do your self-assessment, and there's also a section there for making a plan and then reviewing that in a discussion with manager or team lead, and being able to develop that professional development conversation. But if you're short on time, there is a worksheet, which I will show you shortly. The page here is the page you can return to by using the home button and clicking on A, B, C, or D, and it will take you to the section that you want to be working on. For example, here's A, the roots, kaupapa as a strong foundation, and under that are the capabilities themselves. And the sections there, those levels, you tick your level and fill in these text areas, free text areas, with your thoughts. The fallen leaves are supporting you to do that thinking. And then there's setting the task of your goal setting and creating atomi goals, which are achievable, realistic, time-framed, etc., with a descriptor or a whole set of questions here to help you determine a goal is those things. So is it aimed, is it time-bound, is it achievable, etc. And then to note your goal on this action plan. That action planning section is where you can set your own goals, and it's got a seasonal aspect to it, which is allowing you to think about your professional development across an entire cycle of time. So you can see that it's like a calendar season, starting with Matariki, but of course you don't have to start in the winter. But it takes that idea of taking a stock take, a winter stock take, and then going into spring, planting your new goals, and then into summer, where all that growth happens, and then into harvest period. So that's a workbook approach. And then there's a worksheet approach. This is great for people who have less time, who perhaps are casual or newcomers to the sector, and for new starters. Once again, there's a welcome section, some instructions, and then there's this one-page self-assessment. On the right are the capability groups. They don't have all those descriptors in them. It would have to be a larger document again. So I would suggest a side-by-side approach on your screen. So you download this worksheet and then you look at the detail in your Tōtara framework, and then you can do your self-assessment. So you can see here you can use the labels of kōrero 1 through to mātou 4, or an X for areas that don't apply. And then you've got exactly the same template here for your action planning, where you can name a goal and then put in some detail around it. And you can print this off and you've got a document to share with your colleagues or with your leads and manager. Other resources, well, there's a great e-learning module. This was developed a couple of years ago. It's now on the LIANZA web page, so anybody can go open it up and start this process. It's a guide to your learning and development. If it's as good for you as an individual, if you want to go through it. If you're going through as a team leader or manager, allow a little bit more time, because there's some really great links within this e-learning module that you might want to go down the rabbit holes. And it took me about an hour to go down everything. But if you were just going in as an individual, it'll probably take you 20 minutes to do this e-learning module. There's also team exercises, so you can undertake learning needs analysis to, as I said, take the pulse of your team, and to do some exercises. If you had a team day or a team workshop day, there's 4 team exercises there that you could look at and choose to use, with some suggested formats for you to do that. So some really good guidance for you as a team leader or manager. And go and have a look at those on the webpage as well. So really the idea is to put Te Tōtara into your context, whether you're using the workbook or using Pa Tōtara, which is a sort of shortcut, whether you're using the framework for conversations with people, and just as a conversation starter, really, what do you bring in? This is the strengths-based approach, even for a new start. What do you bring in? What was your motivation? What's unique to you? And then what are your objectives? What are your goals? And then what are the opportunities available to you? And to support people thinking then about what's their baseline LIS skills and knowledge, and who are their role models? What are the opportunities ahead? And helping them think about their capability journey. So I'm going to pause there, Angie. I think I'm probably well over time, but I wanted to give a chance for people to make questions, but also to just give comments. And if you are using Te Tōtara, to be able to tell us that. Here's a link to the webpage.
You didn't go over time, thank you. And that, as usual, that was very clear, Anne-Marie. I've got everyone muted, so it makes it a little bit difficult for people to actually ask their questions. There haven't been any questions in the chat. So if you have questions, can you please put them in the chat now? Let's see. No chat?
I can see in the chat there is so there's a comment here, yes, from Catherine.
Okay, so Catherine has said, kia ora, thanks for this kōrero. I was out of the profession during COVID and this is the first time I'm hearing about it. So sorry if I'm barking up the wrong tree here. When LIANZA professional registration was started, the intention was for it to become a requirement for librarians in Aotearoa. This didn't happen and the scheme has been losing registrants year on year. Is this framework intended to be a replacement, and what is being done to embed the framework within the profession? Anne-Marie, so there is discussion around the connection to the
bodies of knowledge and registration.
Professional registration. Yeah.
So thank you.
Do you want to...
Great question, because you've used that word embedded as well. So already embedded in the sector are the bodies of knowledge, the LIANZA, code of conduct. There's values being worked through. There's always going to be other reference tools, and Te Tōtara needs to work in tandem with them and not against them, and it's certainly not a replacement. With the Professional Registration Board, this project's been running for 6 months, so in that 6 months we have looked at the bodies of knowledge and mapped them against the capabilities in Te Tōtara, and they map perfectly well. If anything, the area for digital literacy in the bodies of knowledge now needs to be sort of upgraded a bit, because it's a lot older than the descriptors in Te Tōtara. So they will feed each other. I guess where they map really well is that, just like if you've got a performance review where you are looking at your professional development, when you're looking for professional registration, you're also being asked to bring activity. What have I been doing? How do I demonstrate my professional development? So in both those instances, you can enrich your registration process and you can enrich your performance review process by taking your thinking from Te Tōtara and basically doing a copy and paste into those other processes. So I see them as working in tandem. And how to stop Te Tōtara having the same fate? Honestly, I've worked with workforce capability frameworks that died a death and disappeared into the archives, but I've also worked with others that have lasted. One of them since 2006 is still very much a part of the sector. So I guess that's the challenge for all of us today, is how do we support the use of this resource?
Great. And Marion said a good clear presentation, and good to see the question from Catherine, as we need a linked up professional development program for the whole profession, indeed.
I wonder if
now,
we take the sting out of, if Te Tōtara can take the sting out of professional development for a lot of people, and even at that korero level, support people to think about, when I go for professional registration, if that's where my aspirations are. So it becomes a conversation starter for professional registration.
Yep. Kylie says, I've been attending the community of practice and I've enjoyed seeing the way different services have been adapting the framework. Could you speak more about the ways that libraries can adapt Te Tōtara?
Yeah, thanks. Kylie, there's been some really great stories, and the wonderful thing about it is that there's really no part of it that you can't adapt. It's totally customizable. Whanganui District Library, for example, they have Māori librarian leadership roles there that had looked at Te Tōtara within the Whanganui context and decided that instead of using a metaphor of a tree, they wanted to adapt even the metaphor, and they have developed a te wakaho model. And that's a really beautiful metaphor for workforce development as well, because you've got the whole team in the waka. You can be a tōtara waka. And instead of branches, you've got paddles. Now, you don't need an entire team on one side of the waka. It'll tip over. You actually want the team to have the spread of capabilities you need to go down the awa. So you can adapt the metaphor. And other ways that people have adapted it is to just highlight one particular capability area and say, this is going to be our focus for the next 12 months as a team. Another way is, and I know that somebody on the meeting today, I saw there's a team leader on the call today who has been giving it to his new starters and supporting them to do an early sort of benchmarking. Where am I? And they've been using the worksheet to do that, not the workbook. And then also sharing it with other more experienced team members to look at shaping their professional development goals. So yeah, I hope that helps a bit, give you some ideas. But join the community of practice. You're all very welcome. It happens once a month for an hour at lunchtime.
And as Anne-Marie has said, that she's available while she's still on contract here with LIANZA to meet with different organisations in different parts of the sector to work through some of the workforce capability projects work. And everything's on the website. I did put a link in the website there. If anyone has any more comments or questions and you want to talk about them, can you please unmute yourselves, because I can't unmute you now. I've muted you all. Amanda, did you have anything you wanted to add, Amanda Bond, about professional registration at all? You don't need to. Any more questions, anybody? Okay, Natalie. Natalie has said, I'm a member of the Kotui training working group where we are looking at establishing standard training for symphony workflows for the consortia. And we are going to meld this framework into what we produce, hopefully. Great.
Yeah, that sounds great. it can be quite inspiring, and then you meld it into something. You don't have to do a structured, approach to Te Tōtara. So I'm just thrilled to see that it's going to work for you in that way. Thanks, Natalie.
And Matamata Piako have already done this and they are in the group, so we have a head start. That's
Yes,
great.
early adopters. Well done.
Fabulous.
Mm.
Any more comments or questions? So there will be some other sessions. There's a on Te Tōtara, one looking at with Te Raupu Whakaho, looking at bicultural capability, and also another one with the tertiary libraries, so that's more sort of specific areas. There is, I'm sure that Anne-Marie is open to, I see there's a few school librarians here, Julia, that she'll be open to, looking at something with your sector as well, part of the sector. So if there's anything else, we might close it unless there's any other comments. Okay, it's been very informative, the feedback is, Anne-Marie. So we're just going to close with karakia. Anuia, anuia, anuia ki te uru tapanui, ki wātia, ki māma, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua e te ara tangata, koia rā e rongo, whakāria, aki ki runga, ki a tīna, tīna huie, taiki e. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and please share the recording when it comes out. It will be on the website where you can find the resources under workforce capability and professional development. Thank you, Anne-Marie. People are thanking you there. So thanks everybody.
Ka kite.
Ka kite.